the higher realms today, okay? So we're on here, still on chapter 1. Isn't that great? We'll probably be on chapter 1 for chapter 1, Mishnah Aleph. As we know that the text here are done in a series of what we call Mishnahs. Like a Mishnah is like a bullet of information. And of course, as we have Kaplan's commentary, it goes for pages and pages, taking apart each one word. And his style, of course, is that when you see a word, and classically in classic commentaries, is he scans all over every single other book where they talk about such a concept, and then he brings it in. But of course, when you do that, sometimes you get flooded with too much. And this is also what the Chachamim do say. We have handed down by our wise men. You reveal a handbreadth, and you hide two. That's the classic. When they talk about giving knowledge, they'll reveal a little bit, but they're hiding two at the same time. Okay? So sometimes you have to be intuit to read in between the lines and rise to intuit what's really being said. So we're on Mishnah Aleph, or actually 1:1. And it starts with what we talked about last week, with B'shloshim v'shtayim netiyavot pliot chachma, with 32 wondrous paths of wisdom, chakak, engraved, ka Hashem tzavakot, and all the rest of these names. Now, other versions don't have all these names. I think there's a version that I did with you guys, which was the abridged version, called the short version, right? Oh, so no, it did. It lists them all, right? So it says, God of Israel, the living God, God Almighty, high exalted, dwelling in eternity on high, and his name is holy. And he created his universe with 3 books, with text, and with number, and with communication. Okay? And then he ends here, they are the 10 Sefirot of nothingness and the 22 foundation letters. Here, at least, in this version, because don't forget we said last week that there are many versions, right? There's the short version, the long version, the Gra version, and then there is the other one. Someone help me. Sadia Gaon, who lived in the Gaonic period in Babylon. So you have this run-on sentence. A lot of times they do write like that, but you have to kind of condense it. There's a classic rule that we've been taught by the mystic Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto. He has a great book. The book is called Derech Tevunot. Not Das Tevunot, but Derech Tevunot. Actually, it's a book about Talmud, about learning Talmud. And he does an amazing thing in this, and you can use this rule if you're ever stuck with a text and you just can't grasp. So you just have to ask these couple questions and help you to focus in on what's being said. Okay? And the questions you ask, first of all, we would call in grammar, we would call it subject predicate, right? As we know. But here he calls it nose nasu. Nose means what is carrying, and nasu means what is being carried. Every sentence has to be of these two things. Okay? A nose, your vessel, and nasu, what's inside it. In other words, just to cut to the chase, what are we talking about? And then that's question number 1. What are we talking about? And then question number 2, what do we want to say about it? So here we have to take apart the sentence and break it down into what are we talking about and what do we want to say about it. Okay?
What page are we on? Do it again.
We're on page 5.
Again? Okay.
I'm just starting with the beginning because we have to get back into what's being said.
Is there a hand?
That's right in front of you. In other words, with 32 mystical paths of wisdom engraved Ka, Hashem, we'll just use engraved Ka, Hashem, Tzavakot. Put the other ones in parentheses. And he created his universe, and go all the way to and. When it says, and his name is holy, close that in a paragraph. And then you continue the sentence, and he created his universe with 3 books. With text, with number, and with communication. Okay? So now we have to ask the question, what are we talking about here? What's the vessel? And then what is it holding? Okay? There's lots to talk about as we're going to investigate each one of these concepts, okay? But if I ask you quickly, just right now, what are we talking about here? If I would just ask you, I'll stop the recording. What's being said here? What are we talking about? Let me just ask you. What are we talking about? Here, take this.
Thank you.
Yeah, here.
You said it's on page 5.
Yeah, if you have a book, but you don't have a book, so it can't be page 5.
Oh, you don't have a page 5.
No, I don't have books for everybody. I encourage everybody to.
I don't like to carry it around.
I know.
How are you?
Hello. Thank you.
Do you have a paper?
I don't have anything that's not already down here. What did he give you?
Yocheved, is that your book or is that here?
This is mine.
Okay. I had 2 books,
And I should put my name in it.
but someone borrowed it last week, and then the other one, I don't know what happened to it. Okay, fine. Well, whatever. It'll be what it'll be, God willing. Okay. What are we talking about? You got to shorten it down to its basic. Okay? With 32 mystical paths of wisdom engraved, God. So the question is, what are we talking about?
Hashem engraved it.
Right. And he created his universe with 3 books. Okay? So we're talking about God creating, and we're talking about the universe. Okay? So in terms of creation, in terms of the creation of the universe, that's what we're talking about. What are we saying about it? There's something called 32 mystical paths that are engraved and created. Okay? And it's almost like the rest of the sentence would be with 3 books. So the question is here, there's 2 widths here. If you look at it, there's a with 32 mystical paths of wisdom, and then there's with 3 books. So what do you have? Is it a book, or is it a 32 paths? Okay?
It must be both.
We're trying to open up the text. So how do we open up the text? You know, in simply, when all of the Talmudists are sitting and learning, and all of the people who are learning the codes of Jewish law, and it was the derech, and it was the way of the Ari, the mystic Kabbalist of the 16th century in Sfat, in the beginning of his day, his learning seder, he would delve into the Shulchan Aruch, the code of law, and he would sweat with difficulties, questions, and he would try to answer those questions. And then after that, and he would break a good sweat, by trying to just understand. Then he would delve into the mysteries of the universe. That's how he would learn, every day, okay? And they ask him why. He says, because when you ask the questions are the klipot. They surround the fruit. As we have an orange, a banana, or fruit, right? And you want to get to the fruit, there's always going to be covering. And how do you break really into the fruit? You got to ask questions. You got to know how to ask questions. And you got to, so in order to try to understand what's really being said here. Okay? So there's a lot of things that are being said here. Okay? We have, the creation, and we have engraving, and we have 3 books. So what are we saying? We have a no-say. The no-say is the creation. What do I want to say about it? I want to say a few things. 32 mystical paths of wisdom, engraving, and 3 books. Done with 3 books. Creation is done with these things. Okay? Now there's an interesting commentary. I'll just throw this at you. Okay? With 32, if you look at it in the Hebrew, it's b'shloshim. B'shloshim means with, or it could be also in. We touched a little bit about this last week. With 32, are you making the creation? Or in 32? And what's the difference? Yeah, there you go. The Ramak instantly says, well, it's both. Because, as we're going to see, what are these 32? And it says it right at the end of this paragraph, right? They are 10 Sefirot of nothingness and 22 foundation letters. Do you guys have? No, we don't have enough. didn't photocopy what you have on page 29. But on page 29, if you have this at all, you can show him what's on page 29. On page 29, what do we got? We have classically the diagram of the 10 Sefirot. The 10 Sefirot, as we need, this is the classic array of the 10 Sefirot after them being resurrected. Once upon a time, they were 7 primordial kings all in a row, and boom, 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 10 little Indians, and now there's none. Okay? But now, they're resurrected in a form where they're all interconnected with each other. And then what is the interconnectedness? What forms the interconnectedness? The letters. If you see here in the chart, you'll see that there's lines drawn in between each one of these 10 Sefirot. Now, to break into the Sefirot just a little bit, because we have to understand, and with the way that I'm going to do this book, even though Kaplan, he's more gets into the what do you call it? The intellectual approach. There's a different kind of approach, which is the meditative, or more like the mental exercise approach. Because you have to make this alive. And so when we look at the 10 Sefirot, and as we understand, and everybody understands the 10 Sefirot, we're going to look at it as these are 10 levels of consciousness. 10 levels of consciousness, each one of these Sefirot. So it's starting from the highest, which is number 1, which is Keter, and going down to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right? The highest being the will of wills, that's Keter. And then Chachma is the mind. Bina is also the mind. Is that me? Hey, that's cool. I'm playing all over.
He's talking about the 10 levels of consciousness.
That's me.
Okay.
So, each one of these 10 levels of consciousness, of course, God, He's Ein Sof. You can't put a name on Him. He's beyond. But in order to have a relationship with His creation, He has to build a bridge. He has to have some kind of means of communication. He has to have some kind of means of a relationship. Hence, the bridge is the 10 Sefirot and the 22 letters that are connecting all of the Sefirot. They are without us, and they are within us. Okay? In other words, they're within us. Each one of us has these levels of consciousness we're going to talk about in a second. And they're also without us in all of the creation. The magic mystical number is 32. That's why my email has Reb Yak 32. After they hijacked my regular email, I had to figure out another, so I had to come up with a number, so I came up with 32. Because 32, as we know, first letter of the Torah, Beit, last letter of the Torah, Lamed, 32. Okay? So, in terms of the 32, okay, so we have to understand these 32 are within us, and these 32 are without us. And there's a level, there's a means, there's a technique, there's a practice in order to reach these levels of consciousness that are within us and that is without us. That's why it says with Shloshim and in Shloshim V'Shtayim, in 32 and with 32. They are within us and without us. Okay? Okay, so now let's go into the text itself that we talked about last time. Okay? I believe that we left off on page 9. Okay? Because we're talking about the 32. 32, by the way, if for anybody who doesn't know, is the word Lev, which means heart. Okay? Everything's about the heart. Okay? But of course, it's not the heart, physical heart. Of course, it's going to be about the subconscious mind and the deep levels of mind in our consciousness. Okay? So we have here on the last paragraph. Okay? Here, well, let's go to the paragraph above. The Torah is seen as the heart of creation. The first letter of the Torah is the Beit, the Bereshit, in the beginning. The last letter of the Torah is the Lamed, of Yisrael, is a lamed. Together, these two letters spell out the word lave, which meaning heart. The 32 paths are contained in the Torah, which is the means through which the mind, notice how he capitalizes mind, is revealed. It is also the link between the mind and the physical universe. The Torah is therefore expounded in 32 different ways, as taught by Rabbi Yossi HaGalili. Okay? But we're not going to delve into Rabbi Yossi HaGalili just now. But just to understand where this 32 comes from. The 32 letters, the 2 letters of Lamed and Beit also share other unique distinction. As a prefix, Lamed means to and Beit means in. The 3 letters of the Tetragrammaton, Yud, He, and Vav, can also serve as suffixes for personal pronouns, right? The suffix Yud means me, He means her, Vav means him. So he's drawing now, it seems Rabbi Kaplan is drawing an interesting distinction between God's name and the 2 letters of Lamed and Beit. Okay? So in the entire alphabet, there are only 2 letters to which these suffixes can be joined, and these are the Lamed and Beit. These then spell out these words, li, la, lo, right? Bi, ba, bo. In other words, here he's connecting Yud, He, and Vav, which are the 3 special letters of God's name, with the 32. Okay, just to let you know that the 32, they are something that is intertwined and involved, very close and very connected with God's holy name. The 2 letters, Lamed and Beit, are the only ones in the entire alphabet which combine with the letters of the divine name in this matter. Okay? Just to give a little bit of a background. Okay? Okay, let's skip to paths, where he talks about paths. And why is it unique that the text uses the word 32 mystical or wondrous paths of wisdom. Okay? Because there's different words for roads. The Hebrew word for paths here is netivot, a word that occurs only rare in Scripture. Much more common is the word derech. That's really common in the Bible. Okay? Parshas HaDerech, Yehuda was on the derech, Altir Gazu b'derech, when the brothers of Joseph left Joseph to go down and tell Yaakov Avinu that Joseph was alive. Don't delve into, don't get involved in in-depth learning on the road, okay, because you'll get lost. Actually, it's a halacha. You're not supposed to do that. In other words, if you're walking or traveling, you shouldn't get involved in in-depth Torah discussion because, of course, you can end up in Oxnard, okay? Okay. My dad was doing that, and wasn't that the way where we were supposed to go to Las Vegas? Okay. Anyways, yeah. Okay. So what's the difference between the word derech and the word netivot? As the Zohar states, however, there is an important difference between these 2 words. A derech is a public road, a route used by all people. A nativ, on the other hand, is a personal route, a path blazed by the individual for his personal use. It is a hidden path without markers or signposts, which one must discover on his own and tread by means of his own devices. Welcome to your path. Okay? Here we go. Okay? And that's why we use all the time, and Rabbi Nachman also uses it in his famous story of the lost princess, is which we all are the viceroy and looking for the lost princess. That's right. And the viceroy searched the entire habited world and could not find her. And finally, as the story goes, he saw a path off to the side. And he says, let me take this. And through that path, he found her. Okay? So the idea really here is that each person has their own path, and each person must blaze it. You know, sometimes it's very hard when we're with other people. And people you see their answers, and they're going, I don't understand why this just never works for me. Right? Or this, I keep, and you want to go, just do this, right? And you just want to try to tell this person, right? But sometimes, and this is a good lesson for all of us, you just got to let go. Because you know something? They got to blaze it themselves. Okay? This is part of the butterfly coming out of the chrysalis. If you help it, it won't fly. You've got to blaze the path. Okay? 32 mystical paths of wisdom. And this is where it gets into the part where, don't forget, this book is learned two different ways. Okay? It's informative, okay? Instructional, but it's also experiential. Okay? In other words, this is going to be a meditative device. Okay? The 32 paths of wisdom are therefore called nativot, and they're private paths which must be blazed by each individual. There is no open highway to the mysteries. Each individual must discover his own path. Mazel tov. Okay? So now he goes into something interesting. The numerical value of nativ is 462. This is twice the number of 231 gates discussed below. Okay? What are the 231 gates? The 231 gates are, once again, we have to go back just a little bit, and we're going to all go over this. So don't worry if you're not going to grasp it now. These facts we're going to go over a lot. We talked a little bit, if you go to that page again, that wonderful page on page 29, which says it all, okay? Right? About the 22 letters. We said the 32 paths are the 10 Sefirot and the 22 letters. Now, once again, the 10 Sefirot are the levels of consciousness. Coming from the Ein Sof into something that's communicable. We are finite. We need to reach infinity, the Ein Sof, the light of the infinite. We need a path. Okay? So, and the path is basically to access these 10 levels of consciousness. And the way to do it is through the letters. Because the letters, you'll see, are the connectors of all of these paths of consciousness. You can't do it without letters. The letters, once again, okay, are the primordial building blocks of creation. Again, the world, the creation God looked into the Torah and created the world. The world is the blueprint of creation. But before the blueprint was made, you had to make the letters. In order to make the Torah, you had to have the letters. Okay? And as bizarre as it's going to be right now, okay, take it to just another level. You know, we really don't understand the Torah until what the Torah is until the last five verses of the Torah. You're reading, the storyline, Moses, mitzvot, everything, until the last 5 verses. Only then does it really give us what is the Torah. Okay? And it's so bizarre. And it's the Baal Shem Tov brings down in the Zota Bracha, when it says, and Moses died. I've talked about this a lot. And Moses died, and he was buried, right, in the plains of Moab, right? And there was never a prophet like Moses, right, who gave the Torah to all of Israel. Those last 5 verses, they asked, wait a minute, it says, and Moses died. Who wrote it? Who wrote those words? Right?
Good question.
Who wrote that? So, Rabbi Meir says it was Rabbi Yeshua. It was Yeshua, not Rabbi. It was Yeshua, a student. He says, nah, we got a problem with that.
Moses.
It's okay. How could Moses have written it? Because the Torah is true. He can't be alive and write it. Because it says, and Moses died and was buried. Okay? We don't do that kind of stuff, right? So how can it be, right? So if you say Yeshua wrote it, it's called Torah Moshe. It's not called Torah Moshe and Yeshua. It's called the Law of Moses. It's not called the Law of Moses and Yeshua. So rather they say he read it, he wrote it, and the language is like this. Bidema. Now bidema, they translate it Rashi. Most people understand it. Bidema means tears. He wrote it in tears. Now, if you think about it, he wrote those last verses in tears. Okay? Everybody's assuming that, he was crying doing it, right?
Why are you saying he didn't write it?
It begs. Who cares what ink he used? He's still writing it. Doesn't make sense. It doesn't answer the question. Who cares if he used teardrops or black ink? Okay. So it doesn't answer the question. So the Baal Shem Tov gets to explaining, and he goes back and he says, "Hey, listen. If you think about it, the Torah was created 2,000 years before creation. 2,000 years. It's a verse that says it. Okay? 2,000 years before creation, wait a minute. And we know that free will is given. If we know free will is given, and Adam in the Garden of Eden, who eats from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and God says to Adam, way to go, Adam, you just brought death into the world. Adam said to God, and says, whoa, blaming me for death. You created the Torah, you wrote the Torah 2,000 years before creation, you wrote it, and so-and-so died, and so-and-so died, and this guy died. So what are you blaming me? Right? So he asked the question of how is it that the Torah and all the stories we have written about the 5 books of Moses, the whole thing, Abraham, Noah, Moses, everything. Wait a minute. If the Torah was written before, how do you reconcile that? So it goes like this, and this is bizarre, but this is going to help us. It's very important. And this is how my father-in-law understands it. That we speak about these letters, that these letters are primordial energy fields. Now, before everything, Adam in the Garden of Eden and everything, so there was a Torah, a primordial Torah, that was like, I hate to use this, an alphabet soup in space. An alphabet soup of energies in space, but now the quantum mechanics will say pure potential. It's potential. Okay? But it's not actualized. Okay? So what happened is, as everybody in the Torah were making their choices, the letters fell into the place to be the Torah, the storyline that we have. It was always there. It always existed. But as Adam reached for the tree of knowledge of good and evil, so then the letters fell into their place. As Abraham made his choices, as Noah made his choices, the letters fell into place with all of everything. It's known that when they were in the Torah, when they were in the desert, they only had up until Parshas, what was it? Kitisa, not even Kitisa, right? Oh, Kitisa, yeah. What did they have the rest of the 40 years? Okay, it was still going. It was still forming, coming from potential. Infinite into what's being expressed. Okay? The physicists say that, okay? Because, there's a lot of simultaneous realities and potential that are existing at this very moment. And only once you apply your consciousness to it, does it then form. They do that with atoms, right? They have tests with atoms, and they come out to this whole concept of relativity, that the atom does a dance only when we look at it. When we look at it, then the atom combs its hair.
You want the questions at the end?
Okay, no, we're going to thank you for bringing me back. Okay. So the idea really is, there's another way to understand b'dema. When Moses wrote it, b'dema, tears, there's another way. The word dema also is a halachic status of when truma, special consecrated food for the Cohen, gets mixed in with regular food, non-consecrated food of the Israelite. You take a little dish of a bowl of this and throw it in there. It's called jumbled or mixed. It's called dema, and it has its old halachic status and ramifications. In other words, what happened is Moses did write it, but he wrote it in jumbled form. In other words, he just had a series of random letters. Okay. He did write it. It was his hand. But it wasn't in anything legible that we saw. And only after he died, the letters then went into place and were able to make sense of those last 5
This is from the
verses.
Baal Shem Tov?
Yes. Okay. But only to tell us about a primordial Torah and the energies and how they precipitate into our reality. Okay?
So Kadosh Baruch Hu does that frequently. He has done it historically.
And we do that. Okay? These are the 32 mystical paths. Okay? This is your meditation 101. Okay?
Rabbi, Daled Mem Hey? Yud?
No, ayin. Dalid mem ayin hey.
Ayin, okay.
Okay?
Mhm.
So now to go back to the paths. Okay? So the letters are very powerful. Okay? And the letters are the way of accessing the levels of consciousness that we're seeking. Okay? So let's go back here. Into the 231 gates. What are the 231 gates that we talked about in 10? Right? Don't forget, the numerical value of Nativ is 462. This is twice the number of the 231 gates discussed below. What are the 231 gates? The 231 gates are, if you take the letters, which is 22, and you times it by the other letter, in other words, you connect Aleph with Beit, Aleph with Gimel, Aleph with Dalet, Aleph with Hey, and you do that with every single letter, each one connecting to the other letter, right? You do all of that, you'll end up with what?
Like a matrix.
Yes, you'll end up with 462 actually. Let's fast forward because the pictures are great. Everybody loves the string art picture. Where's the string art picture? Elena, where's the string art picture?
String heart. Oh.
Come on.
Off
Show
the
me
top
this.
of my head, I don't remember.
No, you know what page it's on.
It's on 111.
There you go. Thank you. If you skip to 111, there you go. I'm sorry. I went to high school. This is what I saw on the walls in high school. Okay?
They used to sell the machine, you put the pen in it and.
There you go. I never got one of those. I was deprived. Okay. In any case, so you see here the 231 gates. Okay, because what each one connects. So there's 231 connections of all the letters. According to mystical tradition, right? The basic substance of everything is 2-letter roots. Okay, not 3-letter roots like we have now.
I thought you said there were 462.
But you have to divide it by 2 because the reason why you have to divide it by 2, 462, is because we are only going to go one way. Okay, 462 divided by 2. Okay, is 231. Okay, so because we're only going to go one way. Okay, these gates are means. Look at what he says here. These gates are a means through which one ascends and descends along the 32 paths. Okay. Now the word mystical. Okay, the word mystical actually going on page 11. These paths are said to be mystical. Actually, pliot. 32 nativot pliot. It has to describe the path as being a wondrous path. Mystical, that's how he translated, but really it means wondrous. A pele. Okay? Pliot. In Hebrew, this word comes from the root pala, which has the connotation of being hidden and separated from the world at large. Not only are these paths individual, but they are hidden, concealed, and transcendental. But not only that, okay, let me just see. If you'll take the word pela and switch the letters around, okay? In other words, pela is pei lamed aleph, and you switch it, you end up with, and you just make it backwards, it's aleph lamed pei, which is the letter aleph. Now, the way that these letters work, okay? Aleph, as we know, is really the spiritual force. It's always represented by God, okay? It is the highest of all of the other forces. Really, if you go to the letters from Aleph to Tav, the more to Tav you get, the more coarser it is. Aleph is the most sublime, Tav is the most coarse, okay? Aleph comes before every single letter. As a matter of fact, you can't get to Beit without Aleph. Why? Because if you say the word Beit, before that, what do you have to do? You have to breathe in. Aleph is silent. Aleph is the silent letter. Okay? You know, there was a great passage in the Zohar, in the introduction there, that Hashem was doing an interview with all of the letters. Which one he was going to start the Torah with, you know that. He started with Taf, the last letter, right? Interviewed each one after the other. No one got it. Beit got it. Beit got real happy. But Aleph was still waiting in the waiting room for his interview, right? So Beit goes out and goes, I got it! The job! And Olive goes, okay, what can we do? I didn't even get a chance to get an interview. So we're going to make you the first letter of the Aleph Beit. Okay? So Aleph is the most sublime, and it dresses in Beit. And then Aleph and Beit dress in Gimel. Aleph, Beit, and Gimel dress in Daled. And they all dressing. Okay? So the idea of these wondrous paths as are concealed, very much like our breath before we say a letter. That Aleph is a silent letter. Okay? This is very closely related to the word Pele, meaning a miracle. A miracle is separated and independent from the laws of the physical world. It is also influenced by hidden forces. As such, it is a link with the mystical and transcendental plane. The same is true of the paths of wisdom, as we're going to talk about wisdom. According to the Zohar, the word Pele specifically relates to the paths of wisdom. The type of miracle denoted by the word Pele is specifically one that is accomplished through the manipulation of these paths. The methods of manipulating these paths is one of the important teachings of Sefer Yetzirah. Okay? So we're going to hopefully discover these paths, and we're going to all become Jedis in training. Okay? Because the idea really here is our relationship with the world and with ourselves is going to be completely transformed. Okay? Once you understand the internal workings of things, it is a completely different thing, as we've been discussing already. Okay? There is potential, and then there's manifest. Okay? So the Sefer Yetzirah later calls the three mothers a great mystical mufla, a secret. The first of the three mother letters, as we're going to learn out, because we're going to get a great idea about the division of these letters. Okay? That there's what? Mufla. Mufla. I'm going to spell it Mem Vav Pei Lamed Aleph. But the idea really here is the first of the mother letters is an Aleph. We'll talk about these later. According to the Kabbalists, the letter Aleph denotes Keter, crown, the highest of the Sefirot. It is with regard to Keter that Ben Sira said, in what is mysterious, mufla for you, do not seek. As we're going to investigate that later. Okay?
Say again? What is mysterious?
Yeah, if it is in what is mysterious for you, do not seek. It's an interesting line. We'll have to investigate that. Okay? I don't know offhand the explanation of it. The Kabbalists call Keter the level of nothingness, ayin. It is on this level that the laws of nature cease to exist and can therefore be altered. And that's the level of consciousness that we work to. In other words, if you go back to that page 29, do I get the number again?
111.
No, not that one.
29.
29. Keter number 1. Don't forget, these are levels of consciousness. Okay? Now, if you want to know which way are we going to work, we got to work from the bottom. That's the way it goes. Okay? The levels of consciousness actually work with the Keters being the highest, most sublime. Just like us, we can understand ourselves. Let's just understand ourselves just a little bit. You know, we have a conscious mind, and we also have an unconscious mind. And then behind that, the unconscious mind, I mean, we like to, and we're always trying to draw things from the unconscious mind, right? Dreams come from the unconscious mind, and an intuition. The way we understand that then there's beyond that, okay, the will, okay, which is like, where is that coming from, okay? That is Keter, okay, so it's absolutely sublime, okay? Ayin, nothingness. And that is a level of consciousness. When you reach that level of consciousness, then what happens, right? All creation can be altered because you're completely reborn again. As a matter of fact, when we go into the mikvah, when people go into the mikvah, right, as the Hasidic men do every day, right, and Rosh Hashanah, people go before Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, right, the idea really of the mikvah is so profound and it's so deep because really what happens is a person, water is the idea that is supposed to nullify your total existence. And a person is supposed to revert back to nothingness. So it's not so much as going in the water, But it's when you come out of the water, you're a completely different person, okay? But it's a technique that you have to use the consciousness, okay? By the way, I believe my wife does things where she brings, there's a thing to go to the mikveh, even women, to go to the mikveh on Erev Yom Kippur. Okay? As the book Raziel points out, which is also one of the oldest books we have in Kabbalistic tradition, the book Raziel, the three letters Pele represent increasingly hidden values. According to the phonetic families defined by Sefer Yetzirah, the first letter Pei is pronounced by the lips, the second letter Lamed is the middle of the tongue, and the final Aleph, which is from within the throat. Thus, the first letter is pronounced with the outermost revealed part of the mouth, while the last is voiced with the innermost. How interesting. The word Pele thus denotes the transition from the revealed to the concealed. So here's a meditation. And did anybody do their homework last week? You didn't even remember what the homework is. You remember the homework? Somebody has said, what was your homework assignment again, Rabbi? Right? Okay, some people weren't here, so therefore you get a 0, okay? Okay, the homework was, what? Yes, because don't forget, where do these 32 come from? It's not just random. I'm showing you nice pictures here. It's 10 Sefirot and 22 letters. 32 times the name God is mentioned in the first chapter of Genesis. And God said, let there be light, and God did, and God saw, God called. There's 32 times. So the idea of the homework assignment, which you can make up for it, but I won't guarantee you'll still be deducted 10 points. Okay.
The first chapter?
Yes, you know, but first, you have to get into what do you want? You have to go deep. What is it that you want? Especially if you do this Rosh Hashanah, okay? But there are other meditations you have to do Rosh Hashanah. Don't forget, Rosh Hashanah is the head of the year. And whatever you think in the head of the year, it's going to set the pace for the whole rest of the year. It's very important on Rosh Hashanah not to get angry, okay? Not to lose it. You got to keep it cool, no matter what. And believe me, you know you get tested big time. Because that obnoxious person sits to you in shul and nudges you. Like, what page are we on? Okay? Or whatever. Are you going to go to the soccer game after? Or whatever. Okay? Cool. And joyous. Okay? And confident. So the idea really was to come up with what you want and read the first chapter of Genesis, because when you read the first chapter of Genesis, you're going to hit those 32 paths of wisdom. Okay? The 32 times that it says the name of God, delineating. Okay? So here's also another meditation, just to say the word Pele. 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 Because what are you doing when you're doing Pele? As what he's saying here, and he's describing here, okay? What it is it the transition from the revealed to the concealed. What it is, really, I would, in terms of looking at that, the transition from the revealed to the concealed, usually you would think, you want to start to go in. Okay? In other words, when you want to say, everybody is looking for the aha moment. No? That's why my dad, he called his website aha.com. It used to be psychodynamics, okay? But then we're going with aha. Because everybody we're craving for the aha. Everybody, okay? So the aha is great. So Pele is the aha. Because Pele is, you're looking at something there, and you're integrating it into you, and then you're having a reaction going, astounding. This is a wonder. Okay? The idea here is to do that all day long. The holy sages, the Baal Shem Tov, all of the Hasidic Rabbis, how they live, they were walking in the Shekhinah all the time. Every single one of their altercations, talking to people, dealing with things, it was all God to them. It was all just a different expression of God to them. And they were all in a state of wonderment all the time. And that is what real Yirat Shamayim is. Okay? When we say Yirat Shamayim, what do we say? Literally it translates as fear of God. We don't like the word used to fear, we use awe. Awe. Awe is, this is a wonder. Okay? So the meditation of Pele, the next time you're encountering something, anything, Pele. And then you have to contemplate what is the wondrous part of this. Okay, Jane, you had a question.
No, not a question.
Okay.
I had just as a sharing. I say Shaham a lot. And
Good for you.
which doesn't, no, I'm just,
No, it's very important.
the saying of it is, it transitions you. I can't find the word to
Okay,
describe it.
we'll get to it. We'll get to it. Okay, it's especially this time of year to read to Helen. Thank you. All right, so here, let's go. 32, we got paths, blaze, wisdom. Okay, these 32 paths are said to be paths of wisdom or chachma. In a Kabbalistic sense, wisdom is seen as pure, undifferentiated mind. It is pure thought, which has not yet been broken up into differentiated ideas. Wisdom is the level above all division, where everything is a simple unity. In other words, when we look there, again at page 29, okay, we see number 2. Number 2. You know, when it says Bereshit, the very first word, the very first letter of the Torah was with the Beit. Beit is number 2. Beit is the second Sefirah. Beit is wisdom. Okay? Now, how do we look at wisdom? Wisdom is the seed. When you look at a seed, if you don't know what kind of seed it is, you'll be totally lost, right? If you know what kind of seed it is, you'll say, great, it's an avocado pit, or, you know, it's an apricot pit, or whatever. But a seed, by any chance, if you cut it, does it look like a tree? Does it look like a fruit? No, it doesn't. It's just pure potential. Very much like Chachma in our mind, we have a subconscious. It is a level of consciousness called Chachma consciousness. That's the level of consciousness which we call no thought. Bina, on the other hand, number 3, is another level of consciousness. Bina consciousness, which is called a differentiated thought, an idea, but it's an expression of the idea. Now, the idea is, how do you reach no thought? Right? And if we did this exercise with you, you might be able to practice. Aryeh Kaplan goes into this, and as soon as you get to the point in your mind of, I've reached no thought, wow, you just thought something. Okay? So the way that it is used, and the technique it is used, that is like a pendulum. It's like a pendulum swings. So you'll swing from thought, and then you'll try to get to an area of no thought. And then you'll swing into thought again. And then you'll try to get your consciousness into the area of no thought for a longer period of time. The idea here is to get to the level of consciousness of no thought. That's where the most dynamic ideas come from. The seed, our consciousness, our deepest subconscious, it then is able to bring out and move into Bina, which is consciousness. Okay? Okay, we have to stop here. Okay? But just to go over 32 paths, Genesis, the Sefirot, and the letters. We know that the letters are very powerful building blocks. The paths to reaching these levels of consciousness is going to be through the letters, okay, and the meditation of the letters. And then we also understand what does it mean by mystical or Pele, okay. By Pele, that we understand Aleph as the silent, okay, and then we're understanding that wisdom, and we're understanding that to get to the level of, you know, the greatest discoveries are not when they're actually focusing on the formula. It's usually when they're in the bathroom, right? Or when they're getting in their car or taking a stroll, right? And all of a sudden they're in the middle of something, and all of a sudden it comes into them, right? Blast right from the subconscious mind. Okay,
When you're driving on the freeway, maybe.
driving on the freeways, be careful with that. But yes, whatever. The mind drifts and it goes on to another level,
It just pops in.
right? Okay, I have to stop now because